Welcome to Alive and Seasoned. My name is Charity and I am a life coach. I've received some very good positive feedback, one-on-one feedback from some of the people that have watched the video that I did on mastering your emotions. If you have not watched the video yet, please go ahead and watch the video on how to master your emotions on this channel, Alive and Seasoned. And while you are there, please subscribe and also hit the notification bell so that when I post a new video, you will be the first to enjoy it together with your friends and your loved ones. As a follow-up on the video on mastering your emotions, I will take up this topic a little closer and look at what I am calling resident anger. The emotion resident anger. Anger is an emotion that many people who experience it closely have no idea how to manage it. In fact, they have no idea how to overcome it. So I hope in doing this video, I will be able to help somebody who struggles with resident anger. Have you ever been around somebody who is always angry, who gets angry over everything and over nothing? Such a person is quite irritable to be around, and it can be very, very uncomfortable to be around such a person. In fact, if you live with them, it can almost be unbearable. Resident anger in itself is like slavery. And while we all get angry at one point or another in life, and it is normal to get angry or to get upset because of this and the other, most of us are able to quickly and easily overcome that anger and be able to move on. However, for people that experience resident anger, anger that never seems to leave them, anger that seems to, have a grip on them, anger that just seems to be resident with them at all times. For such people, it is not easy to overcome. And oftentimes, because this anger is a grip that is on that gets a hold of the person, they become vulnerable to doing some extreme things. And when left to be, they will find themselves mishandling people, and especially loved ones. And oftentimes they will lose relationships of dear ones. Sometimes even in the spark of the moment, this individual will do even the unthinkable. And it is not because they do not want to heal and overcome this resident anger. More often is because they don't know how to deal with it and how to live in the victory over this anger that seems to have a grip on them. So as we think about resident anger in this video, I will make proposition of a few things that an individual who experiences resident anger, if it is you that experiences resident anger as you're watching this video, or you know somebody who experiences resident anger, you can share the video with them. So I will share a few tips, a few insights that such an individual can use so that they can become free, not manage, but they can become free from resident anger. For it is in finding victory over the anger that therefore you're able to live a free person, and you're able to live your life without feeling like you're enslaved by anger. Resident anger in itself is a fruit of a tree that has root within the individual or within the person that often experiences this anger. And if you look a little bit close, you will discover that resident anger is caused by a deep-rooted hurt. A hurt that happened sometime in the past in the life of this individual. And a heart that is so deeply rooted. And more often than not, this heart came as a result of somebody very close to this individual. So it was hurt, that it was a seed that was planted. You know, it was something that an individual close to this person did. And while the individual who experiences this resident anger, while they may see certain triggers, things, you know, that cause the anger to rise, the problem is not usually the triggers. The problem is a deep-rooted heart, a heart that came into the life of this individual and found residence, and now it has grown into this tree, and it is, you know, fruiting, it is bearing fruit. And so this individual is vulnerable to so many triggers, and that's why they become irritable and easily triggered into anger by everything and nothing. And therefore, to deal with this deep-rooted anger, to deal with this resident anger, I propose 6 things that an individual can actually undertake so that they can live in the victory, not manage the anger, but live in the victory where that resident anger is no longer has a grip on their lives, but they are able to live and live above anger in a victorious way. So, 6 things. Number 1, acknowledge and accept that resident anger is a reality in your life. Whether it is you watching this video or you know of somebody who experiences this kind of anger that has a grip on their life, help them to see, acknowledge, and accept that it is a problem, that it is running their lives instead of them having victory over it. So in acknowledging, it does not mean that the person is weak. In acknowledging and accepting that resident anger is a challenge and a problem in the life of the individual, what this person is saying to themselves, or what you will be saying to yourself, is, I am giving myself a chance to be free from this chain, to be free from this bondage, to be free from this grip of this anger. So accept and acknowledge that this anger is a problem. And then number 2, trace the root of the anger. Like I have said, the triggers are not the cause of the anger. They are just triggers. When somebody upsets you and you get upset, or when somebody's, or when, say for example, you do something to a colleague, or maybe just say something, and the colleague just sparks all of a sudden and they're upset, and probably it was something very simple. That is just a trigger, but there is the root cause. So number 2, trace the root cause of the anger. Nature teaches us that every tree that you see, big or small, started as a small seed. It was a seed that was planted, put into the ground, and with the right nutrients and with the right moisture content, the tree, the seed rooted, and then the seed sprouted and grew into a tree. And eventually, it bears fruit after its own kind. That's why I said resident anger is a fruit in itself. It is a fruit of a tree that has already rooted, that has been rooting in the life of the individual. So trace the root. And in tracing the root, there are 2 things. 1, acknowledge what is it that was done to cause the hurt, and as a result became a build-up to anger. And number 2, who is it that actually planted the seed? 1, what is it that was done? And 2, who is it that planted that seed, and for what reason? Let me use an example. If, for example, when you were a child, you experienced abuse, probably you lived with somebody that abused you maybe physically, emotionally, abused you one way or another. Probably it's somebody that said a word, threw a word at you, and that word became a seed in your life, and and it has grown over time. And when you think about what that person said, it becomes it hurts you, but then it has built over time and has grown, and it's now a tree. Probably it was a character that you grew up seeing and watching. Probably, where you are staying or where you're living, whether it's your house or the neighborhood. There is a way when you hang around a certain kind of energy, then you become like that energy. You draw energy. If you're living in a hostile environment, then what happens is you also begin to build hostility within you, because that's the energy. So probably it's an environment that you grew in, a character that you grew seeing. So it could be something was done either directly or indirectly to you. So understand and trace that particular thing that was done to you that became the seed for this anger. And then, who is it that did it? Probably it was a parent who abused you. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was a friend, somebody around you, and this person meant something important to you, or it was somebody that you trusted. And whether they did it knowingly or unknowingly, they somehow impacted you with this negative seed, and they became the source of the seed that is now grown into anger. So trace the root cause of the anger. Then number 3, stop feeding the anger tree. When you stop feeding the anger tree, it becomes malnourished and eventually die. So how do you stop feeding this anger so that it can get malnourished and eventually die? Number 1, forgive that person. Now that you know the person that actually did what they did, forgive them. In forgiving them, you are setting yourself free from their grip, whether it was something they did or whether it was something they said. So forgive this person. And indeed, you see, it's a choice of whether you want to live free or not. It is a choice of whether you want to live in victory or not. And indeed, if you want to live in victory, don't give excuses. Forgive the person. Set yourself free from the grip of what they did and from the grip of what they said. And after you have forgiven this person, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for nourishing this tree, for always feeding this tree, giving this tree food. You have allowed it to stay in your life all this while. So you have been nourishing it. So forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and let yourself free. In forgiving yourself, what you're simply doing, you are uprooting this tree. And let me say this. This is probably the most painful part of this process. Because when you think about uprooting a tree, it is a process. You have to dig in. Probably you have to get some tools to dig in. But do you want to live free? Then forgive yourself. Uproot it from your heart. Tell yourself, I will uproot this thing from my heart and I will let it go so that it can totally die from its root. And of course, as you do the process of forgiving that person and forgiving self, then accept the forgiveness that God has already given you. He has already paid the price of forgiveness. So accept that forgiveness. For in accepting that forgiveness, then you become free and you set yourself free from the grip of that individual. Number 4, get rid of any fruit, and I say fruit, of any fruit of that tree that is in your storehouse. What do I mean? In case, for example, because of this resident anger that you have had, in case you hurt other people, probably you have done very extreme things to certain people in your way of expressing and expressing and bringing out this anger. Whatever extreme, if there are people that you recall that you did extreme things, go reach out to them. ask their forgiveness. In asking their forgiveness, what you're doing, you're getting rid of any fruit that could still be out there that could become another tree in the future. Because you see, when the fruit is left, eventually, if it gets the right moisture and get the right nutrients, it will root and it will sprout. So get rid of it. Go to those individuals. It doesn't matter how hard it is. Remember, you want to live in victory, don't you? So go and ask their forgiveness. Without getting into details, just say, I did this in a spark of a moment, in a spur of a moment, or in a spark of a moment, and I got angry and I said this or I did that. I am sorry. Please forgive me. And when you do that, once again, you are destroying any fruit that might still be lingering that could become another tree. And then number 5, in the place where there was that anger tree that you have now uprooted, replace with a good seed. Where you have uprooted that tree, don't leave it as an empty, clean hole. Because what will happen when the evil one is doing his rounds and he comes and finds an empty hole, a vacant place, what will he do? The book of wisdom tells us that he will come with a few more bad seeds and plant, and then you will be worse off. So that space, that hole, when you uproot a tree, there's a hole that is left. If you leave that hole open, just by nature, if you leave that hole open, as people pass by, they might throw in some garbage, isn't it? Or a weed could grow in there. Or it could just be a swamp. And a swamp will breed, mosquitoes will breed other kind of little animals or whatever it is. So don't leave that space empty. Replace in that space, put in a good seed. Put in a good seed of compassion. Decide that because I have healed from this thing, the way I will therefore serve now humanity is with compassion. I will reach out with compassion to others. I will serve others. You can replace that space with love. Love. You just decide I will become a loving person, and you learn, you teach and train yourself how to love others instead of being angry. So when you replace that space with a good seed, then there is no way anything else negative will grow in it. Finally, and number 6, when you see the triggers that would often trigger you to anger, don't turn and run the other way. Face those triggers off. Stand still and face them off. Because when those triggers come, and you will be tested. Life will normally bring tests to all of us. So, and a lot of times we are tested on the places and the areas that we are trying to work on. So, when you see the triggers that would otherwise cause anger, sparks of anger unnecessarily, getting angry over this and that, when you see those triggers, probably people behaving like the way that person that you have forgiven behaved, or probably people talking like that, things that will trigger that anger, stand still and face off that trigger. In doing that, you become the master of your emotion. And in doing that, when the triggers come, what you will be saying is, I have victory over you. And those triggers will turn the other way and they will take off. The decision to live as a slave to resident anger, or to live in victory over your emotions, lies squarely in the life of the individual. And while this process may seem very simple, and indeed it is a simple process if one is willing to go through the process, it may need the help or the assistance of somebody to facilitate you go through the process of healing and into your victory. And I would recommend that you reach out to a good coach, and I would be more than glad to serve you. Allow me to leave you with a short exercise if you struggle with resident anger. So take your notebook and your pen, and let's do a short exercise. Number one, write down what you believe is the root cause. The root cause. I say the root cause of the resident anger that you experience. Whatever it is, write it in black and white. And if you have watched my video on the power of words, I said there is something about writing. When you write, you see it, and then you give yourself permission to see exactly what is inside you by, with your eyes. That's vision. And when you do that, you're giving yourself permission to deal with it when it's in black and white. So write down what you believe is the root cause of this resident anger that you experience. Number two, write down who you believe is the person who first planted that seed. Not those that have triggered, but that one person that actually planted the seed of anger in your life. It was probably one thing that they did, but that one person. So write their name down. Whether they are living or they are dead, don't worry about that. But just write the name of that person that you believe is the one that planted the first seed, the first heart that has grown into an anger tree in your life. And then number three, write down this simple sentence. I forgive you. Put the name of that person. I forgive you for what they did. So you write what they did. So you say, I forgive you XYZ for abusing me or for saying these words to me. I forgive you. So write that sentence down and then begin to speak. There is power in speech. Remember, I said in my video on the power of words, there is power in speech. So say, I forgive you XYZ for abusing me, or for the word that you said, for whatever they did. Say it until you begin to experience a release of that thing that grips your heart. And then number four, write this simple sentence down and speak it to yourself. I forgive you, put your name, for allowing this anger to be resident in you. So for example, if I can use my own name, I say, I forgive you, Charity, for allowing this resident anger to live in you and to find a place in you. So you're forgiving yourself. So write that sentence down and then speak that sentence. Speak it every day. Speak it until there is a reconfiguration by your words of forgiveness. From the book of wisdom, the Bible, it is worth noting that the price of forgiveness for you was already paid on Calvary. And as you forgive that person for what they did, even though it hurts, maybe it still hurts even now, but in forgiving them, then you find forgiveness for yourself. For it says, forgive others so that your heavenly Father can forgive you. And as you do that, it's an exchange. And then you find the release that you so greatly want. For victory is already yours. If you would like one-on-one or group coaching sessions for your groups, I invite you to contact me on the email that I provide in this video or the number that I provide. Most importantly, stay alive and seasoned.